All right, cool. Let's go ahead and get started. So, hi, I'm Zoe. If you don't know me already, I am a software engineer and former professor, and I love educating folks on how to learn how to code. So, today, what we're going to go through is an API tutorial. We're just going to learn how to set up an API or how to access an API using a Next.js app. So, we're going to work with React. We're going to use TypeScript, but we're going to use very similar syntax to JavaScript. If you've never worked with TypeScript, but you have worked with JavaScript, don't worry, it should be very similar. And we're going to work with Material UI for styling. So if you're not already subscribed on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's the only way you're going to be able to send comments and ask questions on YouTube. So go ahead and do that if you're interested in asking questions and leaving comments. So without further ado, I'm going to give maybe 20 seconds and we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, and just a little visual, this is what we're going to be building up here. So we're actually going to be building a country search app that basically allows you to, it's going to use this free REST countries API, and it's going to populate a whole bunch of countries, and we're going to access information like the type of the flag that they use, the name of the country, the region, and the capital, etc. We're going to use that in our project today. So let's go ahead and get started. So yeah, here's the example of the app. So if I type in a country like Canada, I can see that, it'll actually filter for me. It'll filter for the country and actually provide the country that we want to work with here. So we can also filter it by region. So if I wanted to, if I remove this from the search and I want to just filter by region, we can search for something that's in the Americas. We can search for something that's in Asia, in Europe, etc., etc. We can filter by these regions or just have all of them present itself. So the course today is going to be partially focused on the API and like getting it up and running, and then we'll transition to focusing on this logic and how to make sure the filter actually gets started. So without further ado, let's get started. So I have already gone ahead and spun up the app here. I'm using a public template that I have on my GitHub here. So my GitHub is Davidson or Z Davidson if you're American. And the repository name is mux-ts. So that's just to it's a template that I copied or cloned and forked from another user. But basically what it does is set up a Material UI, Next.js, and TypeScript app for you in a really quick way. So yeah, you can definitely use this if you're interested. I believe I'm using Next.js 14 in my version. So yeah, if you want to go ahead and use that, just check out my GitHub profile. It's, as I said, Zed Davidson, and you can go ahead and clone that and use this for the project. Also on my profile, I'm going to have the code from this. So if you see this later and you want to go ahead and like check your code, it should be called something like country search. So you can go ahead and find that there. All right, so I've already gone ahead and spun up the app here. So you'll see that at localhost 3000, we have our Next.js app. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. But yeah, if you do have any questions, just drop them in the chat on YouTube. As I said, you do have to be subscribed to ask those questions. So yeah, just go ahead and hit subscribe, and there's like maybe a 5-minute delay, and then you can go ahead and ask your questions on YouTube. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'm going to want to do here is go ahead and clear up what we have here. So we don't necessarily want it to say welcome to Next.js. So I'm going to go into my pages here in Next.js, into the index file here. And I'm going to go ahead and just remove all of this extra stuff that we have. So everything from main going down. I'm just going to clear that out and save that. Awesome. Cool. Blank white page. That's where we want to start with. The next thing we're going to want to do here is we want to sort of think about the different components we're going to have to add here. And if you've ever seen one of my tutorials before, you know that I like to start by making a folder for all of my components. So let's go ahead and do that. So on the right side here, I'm just going to make a new folder and I'm going to call it components. And we're going to save that. And then within that components folder, I'm probably going to start with a container file to sort of house everything that's going on in this project. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it country search container. Save that and create that component. Awesome. And then I'll just go ahead and import it into the index.txx here. Cool. So we have that linked up and you can already see it showing up here in our on our page here. I'll just also go ahead and remove these styles from this div because we'll add in our own styles as we go through this. All right, awesome. So one thing I forgot to mention, this project is also going to have dark mode. We're going to be able to toggle between light and dark mode, and that's going to be something that we're going to actually start setting up now as we do our styling so that we don't have to think about it later. All right, cool. So to get started with this, let's hop into our country search container. And looking at this actually as our sort of example, we notice that we'll have a couple of different components that we need to make, right? So there's this sort of like larger header here that has the title and our dark mode button. And then we have this like country, the actual search sort of where the logic is going to live, because we have our input and we have our region, and then our select right here for the region. And basically what these two are going to do, they're going to allow us to do the filtering and display all of these different cards here. So I'm thinking we're going to have two containers that are going to be side by side, a header and a country search. So let's go ahead and build those out. So I'm going to start with the header. And we want our header to have two elements. And now, as I mentioned, we're going to be using Material UI for this. So I'm going to be using a lot of their pre-built components to sort of speed up everything here. And so we can really focus on, the API and the logic and those sort of more pressing things. So I'm going to start by using a box component here. It's exactly the same as a div, but it allows me to use SX props, which will be useful if we want to do things like media queries and stuff like that inline. And then I'm going to go ahead and, what was the name of it? Where in the world? And a dark mode button. I'm going to add a typography element for our title here. Cool. And I'll put the title in here. And then I'll make one more, and that's going to be the button element. And it's going to say dark mode. I'm going to save that. Awesome. And we need to actually import this into our country search container. So let me do that. Save that, and there we go. So we're seeing it already. One thing I'm going to want to do immediately is turn this into a flex box so that we can actually see our components side by side, and then we'll just align them in the center. And we're going to do one more thing. We're going to justify the content so it's space between. Cool. Save that. Awesome. So we have sort of the initial bones of the app right there. Another thing I'm going to want to do here is add some padding. So I think top bottom, I'm going to add 1 rem, and then left and right, I'm going to add 2 rem. And there, that's going to just give us a little bit of padding on the sides there so we can sort of more easily see what we're working with. Another thing you want to do for any page that you're working on, any app you're working on, you want to make sure that every page has an H1. It's very important for accessibility and, sort of being able to understand what a user is looking at. So we're going to add in our typography component here, we're going to add a variant, and we're going to set it to H1. This might mess up our styles, but we can fix them. Yeah, so it's way too big. We're going to go ahead and just change our style. So I think it's probably a fairly small H1, so it's probably going to be like 1 rem, maybe 2, and weight is going to be like 700. Yeah, looks about right. All right, cool. So we have that, and then the dark mode does have this little like half moon here. I know that Material UI has icons, and so we can actually access those and use those in our project here. If we go and we search for the moon, they have a little nightlight that works. We can use that in our project. Save that, and we'll use that right here. Cool, awesome. And then we have our little button here. Awesome, great start. So then the last thing we're probably going to do with this header is just define the bottom and the background a little bit. So as you notice, the background here is it's like FFF, it's like white, and then the background here is a slightly different color. So we're going to want to change that so it matches a little bit. I think we actually might even make the inputs here have a white background to sort of match. But what we're going to want to do is sort of like establish what the main background is and what the header background is. So I'm going to select this and grab this sort of more grayish looking background. I'm going to set the whole project to have this background. So hopping back over to my index.tsx, I'm going to go ahead and set the style to be background, and so the background color to be that, and use that. and we have a question in the comments. For TypeScript, you insert the components in the index of the app, like in React. Divs can't use SX. Good question. So let me answer the second one. Divs can't use SX. Divs can use style, like the style prop, just like we're doing right here on line 9. But divs can't use SX because SX is specific to Material UI. So if you're using Material UI, you can use SX. It's sort of proprietary to them. But if you're using div, you can use the style. And for TypeScript. In terms of inserting components into the index into the app, I know what you're saying. You're probably talking about Create React App. This is just a different sort of, this is a different framework that we're using to build a project today. So it's just a different place where the files are going to live. It's specific to Next.js that we're putting in index instead of app.tsx. But good question. Okay, awesome. So we've set the overall background color to this, but we can actually see the background isn't taking up 100% of the actual page. And that's because the app right now is not taking up 100% of the whole page. So what we want to do is actually set the height of the app to be 100 view height. Or let's go ahead and set the minimum height to be 100 view height. And then it'll expand as we get more pages. And we can tweak this as we need to. All right, so that's the first thing I wanted to tweak. Then we'll go back to the header, and then we can actually specify the background of the header specifically to be just white. So FFFFF. Awesome, save that. And cool, you can kind of barely see it right now, but it will become a little bit more apparent when we add our box shadow. So the next thing I want to do is go ahead and add a box shadow to the bottom side of this so that we can see a little bit more difference between the header and the lower part of the project here. So I'll add in a box shadow. And if we just look up the syntax for box shadow here. And I'll copy this for now, and we'll just tweak it to suit our purposes. We don't need that piece, and we don't need this. Save that. So you can see we got a pretty gnarly box shadow. We're going to change it up just a little bit. We're going to set it to, I think it's like a light gray. And I don't want it left or right, so I'm going to just change. I really want just like a subtle box shadow, something like that. Awesome. So hopefully you're able to see a little bit more how the header and the rest of the components are now separated with just a little bit of styling in place. Cool. Any questions? Does style XS work? So it's the same. Yeah, so style and SX. So basically every styling framework you're going to use will be different. Material UI uses the style prop. Tailwind also, this is like inline styling we're using. So Material UI has the ability to use inline styling, and so does Tailwind CSS. So it's very similar in that way. All right. Hopping down into the next component. So we're going to create a new file, and this is going to be where sort of everything lives in our project. So I'm going to call it country search. So we have our country search container and then our country search like component. And we're going to save that. And I'm going to go ahead and import this into the country search container so that we can actually see it. And we'll save that. Import that. Awesome. So right there it is. Going to do the same thing here and transform that to a box. And add in some padding. We're just going to do 2 rem all around for now. Cool. Country search started. So we're going to need 2 aspects here. We're going to need this input, and we're also going to need this select. And those are going to, we're going to sort of start with like a baseline here, and then we'll add on to it as we go on. But these are 2 components that Material UI also has sort of like pre-built for us. So we can actually use, I believe it's the text field from Material UI. And I can just grab their sort of like basic outline. That should be good for us for the search for like component 1 of the search. Import. There we go. And then we're also going to grab the select. Basic select. And I'm going to grab all of this code actually, just the form control here. Grab that, drop that in there, and I'm going to grab these as well. Otherwise, we're going to get a couple of errors, but we can change that later. Just add all of those missing imports. And cool, should not be getting any more errors. Awesome, so we have our outlined input here, and then we have our select. That's a little bit too wide, so I'm just going to change that up, but I'll add in, let's set the width to like 15 rem for the time being. And we can always, or 15 view width for the time being. So it's a little bit more responsive, and then we can change that as necessary. We're also going to, I'm going to wrap these two in a box because we're also going to have our cards display on this page. So we want to sort of have them in these sections. So I'm going to wrap these two in a box and set the display to flex and do the same thing we did above and justify the content to be spaced between so they separate and go to opposite ends of the page. Cool. And the other thing we want to do here, we're going to make this text input a little bit wider. So we're going to go width. We're going to set it to maybe 30 view width. Save that. Could even go up to 35. Cool. And we're going to leave that with as that. Next thing we want to do is sort of touch up the text and what the colors and things like that. So as I mentioned, we're going to set the background color of these to white. So I'm going to go set background color to be FFF. Save that. And I'm just going to add this to the form control as well. Awesome. So they kind of stand out just a little bit more. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change the label. So the label here should be search for a country, and over on the right, it should be filter by region. So we'll add those in. Search for a country. And the other one here, it's going to be filter by region. Save that. All right, and we don't need these menu items. We actually are going to change them. So I added in an extra filter here. Also, by the way, this is all from Front-End Mentor. Front-End Mentor is a great resource to get sort of like starter projects to be able to work on building your portfolio as a front-end engineer. Not sponsored, not paid. This is totally free to use. So if you check out frontendmentor.io, you can like follow along with this exact design and information, or just use the version that's on my GitHub. It's pretty much the same thing. But in their design, they only had these 5 regions. I added a 6th region, an all-encompassing one, just so that we could do a reset if we wanted to sort of get out of one of the regions. Other ways you could have done that, but just I thought this was a pretty simple way. So we're going to go ahead and add all of these regions to our select here. So I'm going to add in, we're going to start with all. And save that. And then I believe it's 6 of them. Cool. And then we're going to go ahead and change this one to America, or I think it was Africa first. And then Americas. And Europe. And the names are important because they are Asia, then Europe. Yeah, because they directly correspond to the results we're going to get from the API. So important that we don't mess it up. In the API, it actually is Americas, not America. So not a typo there. I'm actually just deciding to name the menu item the correct thing this time. And then, oh shit. All right, cool. And save that. Awesome. Final thing we want to do here, value is age. Value is going to be region. So we'll change these so that they all say region. And we're going to change this one here. So that says region. Cool. So the region is going to start out as nothing, and then it will change. Oh yeah, and the label is going to be filter by region. Save that. Make it a little bit wider. Cool. Awesome. So now we have our filter right there. Perfect. So we have our basic sort of setup for the project right now. A couple more things we're going to want to set up. Most importantly is the cards. How are we going to actually display all of this data, all of this information? So let's go ahead and Material UI. Again, the reason I'm using Material UI is so we can kind of like sort of go quickly through all of the styling and then spend a lot more time on the API. So we're almost done with the styling. We're going to use the card element from Material UI. And we're going to use this media card. I'm just going to grab the code from this. And this is going to be our individual country card here. So we're going to use that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create some mock data that we're going to delete later. Const mock data. data. But what this mock data is just going to be is something for our something to basically loop over and to display a few different countries. So if we take a few countries, let's just say United States, let's do Canada, let's do Mexico, and let's do France. And we'll save those. And that's going to be our mock data for the time being. And then if we go below here, we are going to, so this is our container with our input and our select. So outside of that, we're now going to map through all of those different countries. So we're going to map through the mock data. We're going to change this to real data later, but for now, map through the mock data. And then for each country, we want to return a card. And it's going to give me a lot of errors because I have not imported all of that stuff. So we import all of it. And awesome. So we have our cards. Still giving me an error though. Oh, it's missing a key. So we need to add a key for each of these. And actually, sorry, you know what? I'm going to create a new component. We're going to call this just card or country card.tsx. And I'm going to put all of that in there because it's actually super messy right now. So I'm going to just cut all of this out, drop it into country card. Drop that there. Do the same import, add all of the missing imports. And then just use country card here. That'll really clean this up. All right. And then we're going to set the key for now to be the name of the country because that should be unique because, you know, we should only have one name for every country. And you can already see that we are getting the sort of sample data displayed here. Not quite what we're looking for just yet, but sort of we're on the way. So what we're going to do is just tweak the styling a little bit. So I'm going to wrap this in a box so I can access, sort of work with the items a little bit more individually. So we're going to do the same thing, display flex. And then, awesome. And then I'm going to do a bit more individual styling on the card itself. So this is like pre-built sort of information, but I want to actually set the width to be, I don't know, let's say 20 view width. And then I want to have the, I want them to all have, or no, I want them to be spaced between here. So I want justify content to be space between, and, or let's set it to 25 view width, 20 view width. Cool. And how wide are they here? Yeah, that should be good for now. And then we're gonna actually set a little bit more margin just below this input box here. And what else do we need to do here? Oh, I think these are gonna probably need a margin bottom as well. So we'll add that in now as we remember it. And what else do we need? I think that should be good for now. We're going to end up passing a whole bunch of props in here once we do hook it up to the API. But for now, this should be good. All right. Final thing I want to do in terms of styling at this stage is I want to hook up the dark mode, right? So right now when we click dark mode, absolutely nothing happens. But we want it to be like this one. And when we click dark mode, everything swaps colors. So the way that we're going to do that is we're actually going to use Zustand. So Zustand is like a Redux alternative that allows us to manage global state in our app. And it's so much more lightweight that I can actually use it for something like some simple global style like this. I found it's like a really simple way to get it done. You could also just prop drill. That's another option. Totally up to you which choice you go with, but there are a million ways to code anything, right? Oh, and questions here. Oh, questions about divs and boxes from the chat on YouTube. Again, if you're not subscribed on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then you can actually follow along with the chat and, you know, ask questions or leave comments on this video after, and I do respond to all of the comments that are left on the videos. So I'll explain handle change a little bit more when we actually work on it in the filtering bit a little later in the video. But for now, the other question was, how do you decide when to use box and div and like the empty our brackets. I typically use a box or a div when I know that I'm going to want to put some styles, in this case inline styling, onto the component. I could also use an empty element if, you know, I don't want to sort of clog up the space, but I know I'm going to be using a lot of sort of container type styling with these elements, so that's why I'm choosing to use boxes and divs. I'm not using divs very much just because boxes for me have a little bit more utility because I'm using Material UI. But again, boxes are Material UI specific, so just be aware of that if you try to use them. All right, so hopping back in, we're gonna go ahead and download or install Zustand into our project. And I believe that these are the docs we want. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and install Zustand to manage our state. So if I just go ahead and really quickly install this below. We can go ahead and hook this up in our project. All right, awesome, installed. So I'm gonna create a new folder for my store, and just the new index.ts file in there. And I'm going to go ahead and basically just really create a simple store. So it's only going to have like two props. It's going to have is dark mode and like toggle dark mode, because that's all we needed to do for this project. If I had more complex state management, then, you know, I could definitely add that in here. But for this, it's not really necessary. Because this is a TypeScript file, we're also going to have to make sure to make like a props sort of declaration. Again, if you've never worked with TypeScript before, don't worry too much. It's very, very similar to JavaScript, just with type declarations. But if you follow along in the video, I'm sure you'll pick it up really quickly. So we're going to set the interface for the store state. Again, you can name this almost anything. And it's going to have, what I say, is dark mode, which is going to be a Boolean. And then it's going to have toggle dark mode, which is going to be returning void. All right, awesome. And I think I just bring it in here. Store state. Save that. And we'll change these now to match so it doesn't give us an error. So is dark mode. We want to start out as false. We don't want to be in dark mode automatically. And then toggle dark mode. We want to set the state of dark mode, or is dark mode, to be whatever the state of dark mode is, but the opposite. So it's a toggle, right? So we want it to be whatever dark mode state is currently, just flip it. So that's what the exclamation mark here is. So it's just to flip, you know, is it dark mode? Great, flip it to not dark mode. Flip it to light mode, or flip it back to dark mode. And so yeah, we're gonna use this throughout our app to basically trigger this. The second thing that we want to do, again, really awesome that we're using Material UI. We want to basically create this dark mode theme, right? So Material UI actually has a theme called light mode, basically built in to the app. Like when you go ahead and start it up, it has like a light theme option, or at least the setup that I have here does. So I'm just gonna literally copy this light theme option and create a new file and call that dark mode, and then change, you see on line 5 where it says mode, I'm just gonna change that to dark. So if I go ahead and do just that, something really awesome about Material UI too is like it's very customizable. Like I could go ahead and create a fully custom theme, but you know, not really necessary for this video. All right, so we've created the dark theme. I'm gonna go ahead and import it. It's in app.tsx. So I'm gonna create, we have to use this create theme hook and create the theme using the dark theme instead of the light theme. Cool, save that there. And then I'm gonna add dark theme option not defined. I think it just needs a refresh because it just imported it. Yeah, and then I'm gonna add a check here. So two things I'm gonna wanna do. First of all, I'm gonna wanna grab the value of is dark mode. So let's grab that here. So we're gonna say is, oops, this is just the example text. We're gonna change that to is dark mode. And we're going to use store, and we're going to import it from our store. And then what we want to do is check. So here on line 30, Material UI actually gives us a theme provider that's just going to wrap our entire app in whatever theme we are requesting. So we want to do a check here. So is it, if it is in dark mode, question mark, is dark mode? And if it is, we want to give it the dark theme. And if it isn't, we want to give it the light theme. So really simple check to sort of do our entire app in dark or light mode. So that should be all that we have to do in app.tsx. So we can close that out for now. The other thing we want to do is actually hook it up so that it actually does something when we toggle it, right? So in our button, this is back in our header here, we want to hook up our dark mode button there. We're going to give it an on click. So we want to basically call the toggle button. So we need to import that function. So we're just going to do the same thing. Import toggle dark mode, so the toggle function there, from our store. And then we're going to call it, and you see it changed to yellow. It already is recognizing that it is a function, and we're going to call it in our button. So we're going to say on click equals toggle dark mode. Actually, I don't think we even need to do all. We can just literally say toggle dark mode. Cool. And if we hook it up correctly when we click, awesome. It's like not perfect because we've done some like customizations, but it's pretty good. Like we're toggling between dark and light mode. So that part is working. So we know our button is working. All right. So we do have to make some changes though, because as you can see, it's not perfect, right? Like the headers are staying white because we changed those. The background staying white because we changed that. So let's go ahead and give those like custom colors. Let's have that toggle as well. So we can start in the header because we're already there. I'm going to go ahead and grab the value of is dark mode. And we're going to do this for every component. I mean, and granted, it's only like 2 or 3 components that we need to do this for. If it was something larger, maybe we'd take a different approach. Because it's not that many, we can just sort of target it where it's necessary. But in dark mode, I want to do the same check. So I want to check for the background color. If it is in dark mode, then I want to give it a dark mode color. So if I hop over here, I can grab the color from the web page here. And I'm just going to make it that color. This is just for the header. I'm just going to make it that color if it is in dark mode. And if it isn't, then we're just going to make it the white. Awesome. Getting there. And you'll see it already does the text. So all the text already flipped to white. So it was black before, turned to white. So we don't have to worry about that. All right, let's hop down. Let's close out the header and we'll hop down to our actual country search container here. Or country. We can hop to country search itself and work on that. So we want to do the exact same check here. We want to check for is dark mode. So const is dark mode equals use store from our store. We're going to take the state. And we're going to set state dot is dark mode. Grab state dot is dark mode, I should say, and we're going to do the check here. So these 2 places where we're using the FFF, we're going to do is dark mode. We're going to check for that, and if it is, we want to hop in the middle here and drop in that color instead. And awesome. So working there. Cool. Perfect. Final place we want to change it is in this background here, which we're going to have to do in our index.tsx. So we'll do that one more time. But I think it's going to be a slightly different color. So let's just grab this, drop this in here, and import the use store, and save that. And then, yeah, we'll grab this background color. So a little bit darker, if you notice, a little darker blue. Grab that there. Cool. Grab that. And we're going to do the same check. So if it is dark mode, we want to use that color. And if it isn't, we want to use that color. Awesome. Cool. So our styling is like pretty much done. Like not much more. We'll do a couple little tweaks here and there as we need to, but for the most part, we're done. So any questions about anything? There's a hi from Brazil. Hello from Brazil. Nice to meet you. If you want to be more custom in your dark mode, could you? Yes, you totally could. 100%. Great question. So if I wanted to be super customized in my dark mode, I could literally just hop into my theme options here and like really be granular with it. I could change the header. I could change the font size, the font's text. Like you can literally customize so many different options. I won't go into all of it, but like you can definitely do a lot of theme customization with Material UI. So definitely can. Cool. So let's hop over here. All right. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and actually hook it up to our API now. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so if I hop into my REST country, so this is the API documentation, the endpoint documentation we're going to be using. It's literally just called restcountries.com. But this is going to be where we sort of get all the information we need to work with our API. So it's a really simple API to work with, not super crazy. Like, it has a lot of good documentation and there are a bunch of different fields we can get. So let's go ahead and hook that up. So if you've never grabbed an API before, if you've never sort of grabbed the information from an API before, it is fairly straightforward to do with React. What we're going to do is we are going to just make some space here. We're going to set up a little use effect. And within that use effect, we are going to fetch our data. So we're going to use the fetch API here. And the fetch API is something that is like natively built into JavaScript and anybody can use in their project. So whether or not you're building it with React or you're building it with just vanilla JS, you can use fetch to grab your data here. So we're going to go ahead and set up fetch. And we are going to grab, here it is. Yeah, we're going to grab the, or this one here. This is the endpoint for the API. So this is going to give us all of the data. You'll see we won't want to do that in a while, but let's grab all the data and see what it returns first. So we're going to fetch the data at this endpoint. Then we're going to chain a then. So if you've remember your work for the promises, then we're going to take that response. And because we don't know what shape that data is coming in, we're going to want to convert it to JSON. So we're going to call the JSON method on it. And then we're going to change one more then. And then after that is done, we are going to take that data and we want to do something with that data. So I'm going to go ahead and create a data object here at the top, set data. And it's just going to be an empty object for now. And bring that import. All right, cool. And then we're going to, when we get that data back, we just want to set data to be the data we get back. And save that. Awesome. So if we've done this correctly, we should have our data and we should be able to just console log that data. So if we hop into the console here, awesome. So all of this is our data. This is the information we're getting back. Oh, and you know what? It's having an infinite loop because I did not put an empty array at the end. Very crucial to do. Don't forget to do that, otherwise you'll have an infinite loop and your app will crash. All right, let's just refresh it and get like one console log or two. All right, cool. So if you check out the data that we get back, there is like a whole bunch of information we get back. We get like the capital and the capital info and the FIFA codes and like the flags and the languages, and like we get so much information back, and we're not going to use all of it for our project. You definitely can. There is like a V2 of this project where you can kind of go further into it, but for the purposes of this tutorial, for the purposes of this like V1 of the project, we're not going to use all of that. So hopping back over to the API documentation, we can actually see that they allow us to query for whatever data that we actually want to get back. So we just put a question mark and fields, and then we specify which fields we want to get back. So based on our app here, we can see that we want the flag, the name, the population, the region, and the capital. And that's pretty much all we want to get back. So let's go ahead and grab that instead. So I'm going to use this exact syntax that we have on the right here. I'm just going to do question mark fields equals, and we're going to write name, flags. I believe it's just capital, region, and population. That should be all that we need to get. If there's more we need to get, we can always come back and add it, but that should be good for now. And then if you go back to the app here and we hit a refresh, we can see that the data we get back is still everything. Refresh. Oh, fields. Very important that you put the right words in the app, otherwise you won't get back what you're expecting. All right, cool. Yes, all right, now we're getting back. So you see it's a much more succinct amount of data, right? We're getting the capital, we're getting the flags, we're getting the name, population, and the region. Just what we need, not too much. Awesome. So let's go forward from here. Now that we have this data, we do want to show it in our app here, right? But there are a couple of things we want to pass forward, right? We don't want to just display 250 lizards, right? Which we could do. If we just go ahead and hook up mock data and change it, our mock data to be regular data, we could just show 250 lizards. So if I change mock data to just be data, there's so many you can't even see it. Let's go ahead and add a flex wrap. Flex wrap. So it should wrap. All right, cool. But you'll see that we literally just have a super long page with all this information. So what we want to do now is actually take that information and pass it to our card specifically. So let's go ahead and take that data and pass it. Oh, and you know what? It's giving me, this is a TypeScript error I'm getting here. So it says the property map does not exist on empty object, which is what we've initialized it to. So what we have to do is go ahead and initialize our first object while the API is still waiting, or the app is waiting for the API to send a response. We need to initialize that so it matches the shape of our data going forward. So really quickly, this is how we do it. So on line 16 here, where it says data, we can also get rid of this mock data. On line 15, where it says data now, we can go ahead and create our sort of mock country object. So using our preliminary information on the right here, where we're going to want to basically just set this up. So we're going to say, we're going to create a name object, or a name property that has a common property, because we're going to use the common name here. You can see that there are different names. There's a common name, there is a native name, an official name. We're just going to use the common name for now, because I'm guessing the average user is probably going to search using the common name, maybe not the official name. So that's what we're going to use. And we're going to initialize it to be an empty string. Let's save that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add flags. So we need flags, the property of flags. And again, we're going to use the PNG, and we're going to initialize that to an empty string. And then we're going to grab capital, which is going to be an empty array, or an array with just a string value, with an empty string value. We're going to grab population, which we're going to initialize to be 0. So again, what I'm doing here, I'm just matching the types that are provided to us in the app already. So, or in the API, I should say already. So population is going to be 0, and then region, we're going to set to empty string as well, and save that. All right, cool. Let's see what errors we're getting now. So we're getting a data.map error. Also, let me see if there are any questions. Can I use Axios to handle API too? Great question in the chat here. So Axios, yes, we could use that to handle the API. I think people were using Axios a little bit more before Fetch was that prominent. Now that Fetch is prominent, if you do find a use case where you do need Axios, yes, please go ahead and use Axios instead. But Fetch seems to work for the purposes that we have here for now. Could we build an object and import it into state? Clarify that question a little bit and let me answer it better. So could we build an object and import it to state? What do you mean by that? All right, so, oh, you know what? It's giving us an error here because I need to wrap this in an array because it needs to be an array of objects. All right, awesome. Got past that error. Cool, but I'm loving the question in the chat and the hellos, the bon dia, boa tardes. Say hello in the chat if you're joining us from wherever in the world. So let's go ahead and key. Oh, okay. So it's giving us an error here. Key is no longer going to be country because country is now an object. So it's a good error to have. Basically, it means that we are hooking up correctly and things are populated. So let's go ahead and start putting things in our actual in our cards themselves. So country is going to be country dot name dot common. That's going to be our key for now. We're going to use the country name again. And then we're going to pass several things to the card. So we're going to pass the name, which is actually going to be the same thing. Country.name.common. And it's giving us an error here because we haven't basically put this as a value we want on the card, but we're going to put that in a second. So name, population is going to be country.name.population. There we go. And because we're using TypeScript, it even gives us a bit of an autocorrect, which is awesome because it saves us from making like sort of careless mistakes. Or it saves me from making careless mistakes. Country.region. And then we need capital. And the capital is going to be an interesting one because it's actually an array. It's going to be country dot capital bracket 0. It's going to be the first object in that. And then we need the flag. So it's going to be, we just need one flag. So I'll call it flags, but it's going to be country dot flags dot png. And we'll save that. And it's giving us an error here on the first one. It's just going to give us an error on all of them unless we fix that. So questions, instead of doing it step by state like use state, could you build a const country info inside of the use state and import the country info? Yeah, so you could create, the question basically was like, rather than doing this whole like initialization situation, could I just build another object and use that? Yeah, I could build a separate object and then put it in there. If I was using it across multiple parts of the thing, it would make sense, but because I'm just using it here, I just built this initial object one time and I'll leave it there. But yeah, good question. Definitely could do it multiple times if we could do it in a different place and just use it one time if we were using it multiple times in the app. All right, so hopping back into country card, we're gonna go ahead and import what we need. So we need name, population, region, flag, and capital, right? Capital. Cool, and it's going to give us an error unless we fix the interface. Again, another TypeScript situation here. But if I just create an interface with the props and just give them all types, that error should go away. So population is going to be a number, region is going to be a string, and flag is going to be a string. And then I'll specify that those props belong to this. Save that. And, oh, I forgot capital. Cool, should be good to go. Awesome. So let's go ahead and drop this into our card now. So go ahead and close this side because we don't really need it. So we'll see that we have the opportunity for an image to go up here. The height is sort of fixed, so we can change that maybe to 20 view height. So because I know it's a little bit like short, but let's go ahead and change the path for the image to be our flag. Save that. And flags.png should work. And then we're going to change this to be country flag and save that. All right. Can troubleshoot why that's not working in a second. We'll go through and import the rest of them. So let's go ahead and put the name here in card there. Country. And then we'll get rid of these buttons at the bottom because we don't need them. And what we're going to do here is we are going to actually put each of the sort of options here, population, region, and capital, in their own individual typography elements. So it'll just populate one by one. So we're going to have population. And that's going to be that. And I'm actually going to wrap it in a B tag so it's bold, just to save having to style each of them individually. And then next to population, we're going to have, and I think this has just stopped updating. I need to refresh it. And then, yeah, on the side, we're going to have the actual population. So as you can see, it's already starting to sort of work its magic, which is great. And then I'm just going to copy this and change these to be, what is it, region, or, yeah, region. And change that to be region, and then capital, and change that to be capital. Cool. Awesome. So we have our initial app sort of good to go. I might change the width to be like 25 view width, maybe a little bit wider. Maybe set this to be like 15. You know, and again, you can play around with this to like see what makes sense on your screen size and things like that. But since we're doing a little like mini screen size here, I'll just make it this small. But you'd obviously want to think about it in terms of a larger screen size as a default, or a mobilely responsive as a default, really, and then build up from there. And again, this is like the quick V1 that really just shows you how to work with an API rather than how to style things exhaustively. All right, cool. So we've got our data populating, we've got our images and all our information, like everything is good to go. Any questions in the chat? Instead of doing, okay, cool. No new questions in the chat, but don't worry, Crystal, I will get back to you on that handle change. That is coming in this part. So But yeah, if you do have any questions, please do drop them on the chat on YouTube. Again, you have to subscribe and be subscribed for about like 5 minutes or so in order to make a chat, so we can avoid spam and like, sort of ruining the experience. So now what we're going to do is we are going to add in the actual search functionality. So like right now we see Turks and Caicos there, but if I type in Turks, and nothing is going to happen because we do not have the ability to search. It does not filter for anything. It does not return anything new. Like, there is just nothing happening with this app, which is fine. We can fix that. So let's hop into the actual like JavaScript, TypeScript logic bit of what we're going to work on. All right. So now we want to talk about how we are actually going to target these things, right? So there are two things we're going to need to work with. We're going to need to work with this text field, and we're going to need to work with this filter. I'm going to take them one at a time and then combine them into something that works together. I think that's probably the easiest way to do this. So let's start with the text field, because I think that's going to be the primary use case for our user. They want to search for a country, and, they could do that. I mean, granted, they could just press Command F and find the country, but this is like, we're trying to give them a good experience here, right? Because we're giving them this option. So in our text field, what we want to do is access a property called onChange. So what onChange does is it detects any changes that happen within the text field property. So when a user types, that's a change. And so what we want to do is trigger something to happen, have something happen when that property, when that field changes. So the way I want to grab this, I think what I want to do, I'm going to like store it in a variable. I think that's what I'm going to want to do. So onChange, I am going to store the value of whatever it's been changed to in a variable. So let's const and say, we'll call it like search value and set search. So we have this value, because I think I'm going to end up using it in a couple different places because I already know I have that region. So I'm trying to be sort of architecturally forward thinking. So I'm going to initialize it to be an empty string. And it's going to, and then we're going to set the search value here. Or, yeah, search value is going to be, or should we, you know what, we should probably do, let's not immediately set it. Let's call it like filter countries here. And I'm going to pass in the event. And let's create the filter countries function. Okay, so filter countries is going to take in an event, and that event, I know one thing we're going to do for sure is set the search value to be e.target.value, or maybe we'll even do that in the lower part of the program here. And I did mismatched event.target.value. All right, cool. So we have the search value as e.target.value or event.target.value. What we then want to do is, so we have our data, right? We have our like all-encompassing data, but then we want to have our like filtered data, right? So I'm going to create another variable, and I'm going to call it filtered countries. And then set filtered countries. And it's going to start as an empty array. Cool. So I want to initialize, and I think I'm going to actually end up calling this alongside, or let's leave it there for now. So I want to basically replace data here with filtered countries. So to do that, I need to basically go through filtered countries and determine which country matches like what I'm searching for, right? Yeah, so what we're going to do here is we are going to grab, is it data, or do we want to grab filtered countries? Or no, you know what? I'm going to start filtered countries off as data. That's how we're going to start it off. So it's already going to have the value of data. Then we're going to go ahead and filter it. So okay, so we're gonna take data dot filter. We're going to filter through the data, and we're going to filter for each country. And if the country dot name dot common, and one really important thing about this and all APIs will return values in whatever format they see fit. So based on what we see here, we know that it's returning, if we look at the countries on the right here, we know that it's returning them in like sort of standard, I think it's like Pascal case, like regular capitalization, which is fine, but our user may not type like, we might not type in that way. They might type, Turks and Caicos with a common T. And if they type it with a common T, they're not going to find what they're looking for. So we want to sort of standardize the way that we're searching for the data. So we're going to filter the data for country.name.common to lowercase, and then we'll do the same thing with the search. So we want to see if that includes, so we want to see if it contains search value. This is why I said I should probably set it outside. So search value dot, or event dot target, search value, yeah, to lowercase. Case. Or we can ignore search value for now. Let's just make it really simple so we kind of understand the premise. So we'll do event dot target dot value to lowercase. Same thing, just without the whole setting in grabbing. All right, cool. So let's go over what we did here. We grabbed the data. We're filtering it for each country in the data. So data is an array of countries. We're going to grab the name, the common name of that country, transform it to lowercase, and we want to check that string and see if that string includes whatever our user is typing in the lowercase version, right? So even if they type in all caps, we should still be able to find it. Awesome. What we're going to do now is change, one more thing, one really important thing. I want to take all this information and I want to set the filtered countries to that and then use that instead. So we're going to say set filtered countries to be all of this. So we're just going to move that into there. Oops, save that. Cool. Awesome. Now we need to do one more thing. We'll hook up data to be filtered countries. Save that. You know what? We're getting a little error here. So we're getting, let me see if I refresh. Okay, it's giving me the initial value because I think what we want to do, we probably need a loading state. So this often happens when you're waiting on data. It's going to give you back the default value, and then when the default value is returned, it doesn't update the page. Can I just put data in here and will that update? No, that wouldn't work for us. So let's do an is loading state. So what we're gonna do is const is loading, and then set is loading, and we're gonna use state, and we're gonna set is loading to true. So what is loading is going to do for us is it's going to give us something we can return conditionally. So we're going to say if is loading. So if the page is loading, we want to return a div that says loading. Loading. I can spell loading. Else we want to return what we have, right? So we're getting our loading right here. Cool. We want to change this. We want to trigger a change here in our use effect. After we set the data to data, we want to then set is loading to false. So it's no longer loading. We've gotten our data, we're good to go. And so once we do that, hopefully it should work. Oh no, it still doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? All right, let's troubleshoot a little bit. See. That filtered countries.map. Yep, that should be that. Filtered countries is set to data, which is correct. Then we are calling filter. Oh, are we calling filter countries? We're calling filter countries on the text field change. So I'm sure if I typed in something here, yeah, it would change, which is great. but we wanted to do it initially. We want to do it first before any of that changes. Let's see, why is it not? Oh, you know what? I think I gotta set the filtered countries in here. I think that's what needs to happen. I think, yeah, rather than initializing it to data, I think I just need to set it to filtered countries there. Yeah, okay, cool, that fixed our problem. I think we probably don't even need a loading page, but we'll leave it there for now. And we take it out when we determine we really don't need it. All right, so now, if we've done everything correctly, when I search, it shows up. If I search for Canada, it shows up. And it doesn't matter if I type, well, as you can see, I'm typing in common letters and it's showing up, but if I type in capital letters, it still shows up. So we know that our page is actually working correctly. Awesome. Good place to be at. Questions in the comments here. Can you explain what we did with the filter countries, like why we moved the events? Why move the events? Oh, the event. So yeah, the events, I moved this down here, set filtered countries instead of initializing it up here, because basically what was happening, right? When the app was initialized, it was setting filtered countries to be data, the initial value of data. And if we look up here on line 16, the initial value of data is actually like pretty much nothing. Population is 0, no flag, nothing there. But it wasn't refreshing once the data, it wasn't like resetting the data it wasn't resetting filtered countries to be the new value of data. So what we really want to do, rather than setting filtered countries to be data there, what we really want to do is actually set filtered countries to update its own value in the use effect. So the use effect triggers whenever a change is made. So the use effect will set the filtered countries to be the data once that data is received. So it will actually keep it up to date when the API changes information. That's why I wanted to set that there. Awesome question. All right, cool. Next thing we want to do, we want to think about filtering by region, right? So we filtered by country. We want to think now, okay, how do we filter by region? So the way we want to handle this is sort of similar. Like every country has a region, and so what we want to happen here is when this changes, it changes. So we've been given some like initial value here, like initial sort of setup work here from the app. So we have a handle change already, which is hooked up to our select component here. And so on change, it's going to call the handle change function. So we can actually just access this here and use this to set our region. So basically right now it's already doing the work for us. It's setting, when this is changed, it's setting the region to be whatever region is specified, which is great. What we want to then do is apply this to our filter. So I think what we're going to have to do is like make a larger sort of like bigger query that's just going to have all of this in together, because they're kind of like 4 cases we have right now, right? So there's like, what if a user is just typing and searching for a country based on like just the text input, right? And no region. There's like no filter on the region. The region is set to all, which is null. That's one version. Or what if there is? Or what if there's a region but no typing? And okay, maybe it's 3 cases. Yeah, a region but no typing. So there's just like they said absolutely nothing. We want the default value. I guess that's the 4th case. So what we're gonna do here is sort of create a larger like use effect, use memo sort of situation, and use that to trigger all of these questions that we want answered. All right. So using a use memo, sort of very similar to a use effect. What we're gonna do here is we are going to. What I want to do with this is basically just pass in this logic down here and combine it with this handle change information. So I'm going to initialize a variable called countries. And I'm going to set it to be an empty array. Then what I want to do here is I want to check for the region. So if the region equals empty string, oh, and also, sorry, one more thing. I should have set the value here to be empty string. So empty string is equivalent to nothing, rather than setting it to all, because the API is not going to recognize all. Cool. So I set the region to be an empty string. So if the region is nothing, then we want to set the filtered countries, and it's going to be very similar to what we did here. We're going to take the, or no, sorry, if region is nothing, first what we want to do is we're going to set countries to be data dot filter, or no, sorry, if region does not equal, let's do it more complicated. So data dot filter dot country, or for country, if the country dot region equals region, right? So that's going to be, oh, sorry, did not import that. Import from React. Cool. So yeah, that's going to be the first question. So if the region is not nothing, so if it's Americas, Africa, Europe, Asia, whatever, we want to take our countries variable and make it whatever the response of filtering the data to see if the region which we've set on the change, right? We've set the region in the handle change event. We want to see if it matches, and then return all of that into the countries variable, and that's going to be our response. It's complaining here because I didn't pass the empty array. All right, cool. So once we do that, if that is good to go, then we want to set the filtered countries to be countries, right? Yeah, cool. And that works. That's like the simplest version, but we need to consider the filtering as well. So we're going to add another if statement here. So we're going to say if, and this is where we're going to tap into search value. So I think I'm going to want to move, search value. Or no, let's see. I think I'm going to end up getting rid of this filter country. So maybe I'll create something called like handle typing. And I'll just set the search value to be event.target.value. I'll change this filter countries to be handle typing. So that's just going to be when the user types in the text input there. All right, so then in this second if block, what we're going to do is we're going to say if the search value, right? So now we're doing that like additional check. If the search value does not equal null, right? So if there's a value that the user has typed in, then we want to do our filter. But we don't want to do the filter on the data. We want to do filter on our already filtered set of countries. That's where it comes in. All right, so we want to take this, we want to take this logic right here of setting the filtered countries. We're just going to change data to be countries. So it's going to, this countries here on line 63 is referring to the same countries here on 59 and the same countries here on 56. So the countries that have been filtered by region are then filtered to see if it includes the search value to lowercase. So then we'll get a response of not only the countries that are filtered by region, but also the countries that are filtered by user text. Hopefully this makes sense. I'll pause. Once I finish writing this out, then I'll pause and take questions about the filtering, because hopefully I'll answer some of them along the way. All right, so this is like the first if block. So if the region is not null, and if the search value is not null, set the filtered countries to be that. Else, if the region is not null, but the search value is null, just set the filtered countries to be countries, right? Makes sense. Then outside of that if block, so outside like this one, the else will be, so if region, else if, I mean, we don't need to put the if, but just so you can see what I'm saying, like else if region equals empty string, then we want to just do this. We want to just do this check here. But countries would not have been initialized to data, so we're actually just going to take data we're just going to take data. Okay. Yes. Okay, cool. So let me break down what I'm thinking here, right? So we have countries, an empty array. If the region is not null, we're going to set this empty array to be the data filtered by the region. If there's also a value for the search value, we're then going to filter that country's array that now has the filtered data to filter it even further for the country. If we don't have a search value, we're just going to return that initially filtered value for the region. But on the flip side, if the region is nothing, but we do have the user typing in, so this is like the initial filtered countries function that we created. So if we do have the user typing something in, then we want to set the filtered countries to be that data. So we're skipping the initializing the country's situation. We're just going to take the data. We want to filter it as we did before, just for whatever they're typing in, whatever that search value is, and do that. If the search value has nothing, then we really just want to set filtered countries to be data like we did initially, and nothing changes. So it's just giving us back everything. And that should be good. So we want to pass in data. People want to pass in region. So basically, these are the things that are going to be, it's going to cause the use memo to re-render. So if the data changes, right, if we get some new countries or whatever, if the region changes, or if the search value changes. And those are the three things we want to check for with our app. And I think that's it. So if I've done this correctly, I should be able to search for Canada. And if I check Americas and then I search for Canada, I should still get Canada. But if I do something like France, right, I'm not getting it in Americas. But if I go to Europe and I type in France, then I get it. Awesome. Questions, comments, and concerns? All right, cool. No questions. All right, hopefully this is like clear as mud then. Awesome. We're going to get rid of this filtered countries function here and clean this up a little bit. And yeah, I think we've done pretty much everything we need to do. We have dark mode and we have light mode. We have the ability to search for countries. So I can search for France. I can search for Jamaica. Oh, sorry, I need to change the region to America, Jamaica. And yeah, so hopefully this tutorial has been really helpful to you. Again, if you do have any questions, please throw them in the chat before we finish up here. But yeah, so let me just go over what we did. So we created a country search app from nothing using just a Next.js Material UI TypeScript starter file. We grabbed some data from the REST Countries API available at restcountries.com. We used frontendmentor.io for our design inspiration, but didn't really get any sort of data or anything from them, just sort of the design idea. We created dark mode and light mode in our app using Zustand to sort of control our state and store the global state of is dark mode or is light mode. And then we got the data back from our API. We filtered it for just the fields that we actually needed. So that was name, flags, capital, region, population, just the things we're actually going to use in this app. And then we displayed that. And then we worked on our JavaScript logic. We worked with a filter here. So we worked we filtered our data, we used to lowercase, we used the methods includes, we set the filtered data, we're talking about using state in React, so we're using React hooks and things like that to set our state. And then we did a sort of like a double filter. We nested if statements in order to get the sort of response that we were looking for. Again, there are cleaner ways to do this, but this is just sort of like a quick way to get it done for the purpose of our tutorial. But yeah, we filtered by region. So if we want to just see places in a certain region, we can do that filter as well. Or if we want both to happen, we did some filtering to allow that to happen as well. So yeah, hopefully this tutorial is helpful for you. If you do have any questions, please feel free to leave comments under this below on the video on YouTube so that I can go back and answer your questions after the fact. If you do have any questions or you are interested in learning how to be a front-end web developer, you can check out my website, davidsonprogrammingacademy.com. I'll link that down below as well. And we have free courses on HTML, on CSS, and then some paid courses as well that come with mentoring sessions. So like you're paying for the course, but really you're getting like a free mentoring session. So you'll work with a mentor like myself, somebody who's a software engineer who is like very qualified at what they're doing, and they'll be able to work through problems with you. And it could be anything from like problems like this, like building out a project, to like preparing yourself for a job interview through the mock interview process. So yeah, if you are interested in that, check the link in the description below. It's davidsonprogrammingacademy.com. As I said, we have a bunch of courses, a bunch of mentorship options available. Yeah, and if you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out or book a free call with me. I love chatting with folks about this sort of thing. But yeah, other than that, I will see you guys in the next one.